very much for coming to today's information session about managing the risk of heat stress for first responders, understanding the role of diverse heat sources and environments. This is a NHRA project and we're really excited to give you a bit of information about it today. My name's Rowena Morris. I'm New South Wales ACT Node Research Manager and I'll be working as a project manager on this project. I'd like you to know that this briefing is being recorded and will be available on the project page of our website and also on our YouTube channel. I'd like to start by acknowledging country. I'm on the beautiful Darrawal lands in Wollongong, but I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting across a range of different Aboriginal lands today. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'd like us to recognise that these lands and waters have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. Today we're going to cover a little bit about the heat stress, but primarily give you an introduction to the project, give you some background information to NHRA, background to the project and what the objectives will entail, what the outputs are that we're looking for, the governance and reporting of this project, the EOI process itself, and we'll have question time at the end. It's meant to be a detailed description of the project and an opportunities for the interested parties to pose specific questions to assist with developing submissions for our current expression of interest for managing the heat stress for first responders. The questions here will be transcribed and shared on the project page under frequently asked questions for this EOI. You can ask questions at any time via the chat or by raising your hand. It will be an easy flowing, not too formal briefing. The chat is open, use it as much as you like, comments, questions, etc. at any time. We should have time for a verbal Q&A towards the end of this briefing. Most important thing today is that you, the researchers, get to ask the questions and clarify the aspects of the call for EOI. You're going to get a good understanding of what we have in mind for this project and the EOI process so that you're in a good position to submit a solid EOI submission. We really do appreciate the time and effort that goes into responses to calls for EOIs, and this is your chance to get what you need from us to support you with your application. Now, I'd like to introduce the people behind the scenes that are helping out. There is Lara Wedding doing all the admin logistics. We have two special visitors today who are from Queensland Fire Department. That's Dr. Michael Carroll. He's the Principal Program Officer, Research and Innovation. And we also have Mark Gabriel, Team Leader, Health and Fitness with Fire and Rescue New South Wales. And they're going to give you some real inside information to what our end users or participant organisations are looking for NHRA. I'd like you to know that Natural Hazard Research Australia, it's a wonderful organisation. It stands on the shoulders of the Bushfire CRC and the Bushfire Natural Hazard CRC that have been around for 20 years. The actual Natural Hazard Research Australia, we commenced in July 2021. We have $85 million over 10 years from the Commonwealth Government. We have wonderful partner contributions as well as their in-kind, of which this is Michael and Mark, and I really do need to thank them for their time for coming along to help present today. But the core objectives of our centre is to protect human life and minimise harm and suffering, to contribute to developing and supporting well-prepared and resilient communities, and to invest into research that translates into action. So we don't want dusty shelves, reports or manuscripts. We actually want science that's useful, usable and used. So I'm going to hand over to our participant organisation to start telling you about the project background.
So good afternoon to you all. Thanks for jumping on the call. I see my role here is to draw out some of the words in the EOI document in that background and context. In a sense, I'm looking to represent all of the agencies that are stakeholders in this piece. We'll unpack that, and there's a few key words that really stand out to me. A couple of thoughts that I have, and they're kind of like two truths, as it were, is, beware the anecdote and the storytelling, but in the same breath, I think we don't want to lose perspective of what we're trying to achieve here. So that's what I'll attempt to do as I draw out some of the words from the EOI document. I suppose the key thing that stands out is we really want to convey what we're talking about in regards to the multifaceted nature of heat stress. In effect, we're looking at frontline personnel and the extreme conditions that they're dealing with. So I might interchange between frontline personnel and firefighters a bit there. When I say my or mine or whatnot, I'm trying to talk on behalf of all of the stakeholders here as well. But certainly from my perspective, if we're talking about extreme conditions, and as I talk through this information, there's going to be a lot of dimensions that we're going to be covering here, which is indeed the multifaceted nature of it all, and a lot of intersections. So draw out of that what you will. What would we be talking about in terms of extreme conditions? Environmental is the obvious one, and certainly two sides of the coin. We've got the people that are nice little internal combustion engines, as it were. They're working very hard and producing a lot of heat internally, but also the external environment and the impacts of that on them. We've got everything from local, short, what I might call smash and grab type operations, through to big, remote or protracted incidents that can be quite isolated as well. And these don't necessarily go in hand. They could be on their own axis as it was, but in one sense, we can think about extreme conditions where you have every resource at your disposal, or you have very limited resources as well. And so, certainly in the fire agency space, there's a broad range of capabilities that we have. Not really talking to any picture in particular here, but just to paint a picture there. Fire suppression, urban firefighting is certainly one aspect of what various agencies do. We have various rescue capabilities, hazardous materials. So a number of the partner agencies have hazardous materials. We are the primary combat agencies for that. And certainly when you're talking about Australia and the vast geography that we have, bushfire capability is another big aspect to that. So for each of those layers of capability, we have various levels of personal protective equipment, PPE, to suit the various operations. And that technology has changed so much over the years. And I would certainly pose this thought of, what are the risks? Whenever we control a risk, we potentially create another one. Pretty open-ended thought, but see where that thought goes from there with the various capabilities we have and the PPE that we use. And indeed, all of this has a big physiological and psychological impact. You can talk acutely, but certainly when we want to look at longitudinally, understanding the problem there is perhaps a big need amongst all of the stakeholders on this project. And then we want to add the whole axis of, we've got a changing workforce, age, diversity, all of those things are changing. We could start to consider, what section of the population that our different workforces represent. I suppose there I'm referring to, what other comorbidities might be in play with our workers, and how does that play out in these environments and these risks that we're talking about. Big one that actually stands out to me is behaviour. So for all the doctrine and everything that we put on the shelf and we say that we should be doing, we are dealing with humans and human behaviour. And certainly in my view, there's no improvement in safety unless there is a change in behaviour. So my personal 2 cents there is the rubber only hits the road if we can shift those behaviours when we're talking about supporting our first responders in those extreme conditions. And we certainly want to have that long-term lens. Long-term health outcomes are a big thing that we're wanting to consider there. And so all of that background information gets to what we're looking at here. We are looking at strategies that address all of those dimensions, that multifaceted nature, a number of preventative measures, most important, but indeed emergency solutions are also another thing that we need to look at. I will repeat that from a behavioural perspective, I think that's a very important piece, but then it gets down to the basics of reviewing things like work rest cycles, the equipment and the PPE that we use. Anything that can influence executive and policy makers and serve those that serve the community, I think is going to be valuable with this project.
I am Michael Carroll. I'm the Principal Program Officer, Research and Innovation at Queensland Fire Department. I think it's important to point out I am not a firefighter or a first responder. My background is in research and research management. I've been associated with this project for some time now, so really excited to see it sort of progressing. And what I'm going to take you through is a couple of slides around the project description and some of the expected outputs. So project description, look, I'm going to draw essentially for the text on the EOI document first. And then I'm going to add a little bit of context and, Mark, feel free to jump in if you like on any of this. So that project description firstly states that the project aim is to comprehensively unravel that multifaceted nature of heat stress experienced by first responders. It rolls on a little bit as well and looking at things like the interplay of elements with unique contexts for first responding, and the project aims to develop a holistic understanding of heat stress within the sector. Very large, broad topic, But essentially where we're coming from is we have an appreciation of this complexity of the environments that are out there already in which first responders work, as well as some of the complexity around the contributors to heat stress. What we really see value in, though, is better understanding how all those pieces fit together and how they interact and how you can communicate them to a first responder audience. The EOI progresses on to say the project will employ contemporary methodologies to better understand heat sources and heat stress environments and related physiological responses. It's a very large sentence. I remember writing that, so I'll take responsibility for that. But the really good thing about that sentence, this is an element of the description that really gives latitude to the researchers in how they choose to tackle this problem. Like, it's important to understand and acknowledge the general heat stress topic is not novel. And there's a wealth of work behind it already. You know, within our agencies, we have a lot of work. We have white papers, we have procedure, we have policy. Within professional organizations within our sector, such as AFAC, there's huge volumes of guidelines. And if you get into the academic literature, you'll find material there too. What we're saying, though, is, you know, approaches proposed by EOI applicants will have to accommodate this. We'll have to accommodate their large existing body of research, but then also delve into new ways of ultimately explaining how this all works together, how these multifaceted, the nature of heat stress and how the interplay of factors come into it. Overall, the project aims to empower stakeholders with comprehensive knowledge to mitigate risks associated with heat stress, safeguard first responders, all that too. So that's a really good statement in the EOI, in that overall statement remains core at why we're doing this work. It really is targeting safeguarding first responders, but it's also doing it in a way, ideally, that will ultimately engage them and empower them, and this will work within their environment. So from a project outputs perspective, for starters, we have a collection of fairly standard expected outputs, and I'll briefly touch on each in the context of the heat stress topic. So typically behind any research is a literature review. And like I said, there is a wealth of heat stress and heat health information already out there. When we're talking about unraveling the multifaceted nature of heat stress, that unraveling could well extend into the literature review side of things too. So in addition to that, providing some clarity there, instead of just, say, a data collection or a data analysis exercise. Typically, you have a final report and included recommendations related to heat stress and heat health that are realistic and genuinely achievable. So given the type of problem that we're talking about and the drive to reduce heat stress incident and injury, the emphasis here really is on realistic and genuinely achievable recommendations that can genuinely be actioned and that have real world relevance. I'd like to drop in here too, when we're talking about final reports, the value of interim reports as well. We're looking at a project duration for this of approximately 3 years. We've found from past experience that engagement and momentum better maintained with interim reporting where it's possible. So interim reports are something to think about when you're applying for this work. Like any good piece of work, and I suppose the complexity of this topic really lends itself to it, is the potential for a framework. So with multiple heat sources and environments and complex interactions being core to the project, a conceptual structure of how they exist together within the emergency services would be a likely useful guide to reaching and applying genuine real-world solutions. In addition to a final report, researchers need to think about other vehicles that they could action research results into those operational settings too. A framework might be one thing. Another thing could be training and education products.
And this is a good one. I like that. I've got a bit of a training background myself. And look, there are certainly other possibilities in bringing research and findings and potential change and benefit to first responders.
This is an interesting area. Training is an interesting area of outputs, particularly as one of the central elements of the project with better understanding and complexity, and therefore likely having to consider how to both make it communicable and embed it within training. I see the training and education products as a particularly challenging element of the world, but a very interesting and very useful one. And the last one here on the core outputs is stakeholder presentations. Again, given the duration of the project across 3 years, periodic presentations are a must. And really a point that I must emphasize, we work in a dynamic sector that with regular activity, regular challenges, change are a regular part of the business.
Disaster and emergency event type, severity, frequency, as well as things like staff movements within and across departments are all just examples of factors that can influence a project's long-term audience and engagement group.
And in a similar vein to interim reports, regular communication, particularly presenting progress, is a must to maintaining that project presence and facilitating it to completion. A couple of additional outputs: academic publications in high-ranking journals. So this is a standard expectation for any academic research, and an aspect that has served NHRA particularly well over the past projects that we've seen. So looking at publications for a range of topics that have already been provided on their website, provide an excellent example of the expectations in this area. So NHRA have a great track record with publications. Please check out their website. It will give you a lot of insight.
Now, this is a good one for me. Innovation. Other innovative outputs that your team can deliver. So remember, there's a wealth of pre-existing work on incidents of heat stress, heat-related injury, and a significant presence of that within our sector. So we certainly have expectations around outputs that I've just described. But maybe you can come up with something new or an approach that hasn't been considered before. Innovation could very well have a place within such a broad topic that we're putting forward here. And innovation is often one of those benefits of bringing in an outside perspective, such as an outside research team.
So aside from those primary outputs, there are some additional expectations, again, fairly standard outputs
that are part of any NHRA project. I'll mention these briefly, and Ro, please jump in and correct me or add some more content if you want. So look, there's the expectation of a project plan and a plain language statement.
Project plan is fairly standard for this type of work, but keep in mind our very diverse audience of first responders, together with organisations that support them. A sharp, informative and effective plain language statement really is vital to a piece of work like this. Quarterly reports, this is an NHRA process to check in and record progress. So reports cover project highlights, key activities, emerging issues, engagement, milestone review and risks, things like that. And I won't talk to it, but project payments are also generally linked to that type of thing too.
In a similar vein, there's a project evaluation report towards the end of the work. So that's another NHRA expectation. Occurs towards the end, a fairly standard part of any project. And I'll let Ro talk to that if she wants to do a little bit more. The last one though, I like it much more than a lot of other things: relevant communication outputs, including but not limited to your presentation and hazard notes. Not only this work is important
for this particular project, but I think one of the things that NHRA does and supports particularly well beyond funding research is disseminating information across our sector. We have, like I said, a very diverse nationwide audience that your research gets presented to, and in turn, an audience that hears about you as researchers and potentially what other engagement opportunities may exist. So contributing to those comms is naturally expected, but also of immense value to you. For some very good examples, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to NHRA and check out this series of webinars and hazard notes. Incredibly valuable to the sector, well received within our own department. I can vouch for that. And it's something as researchers that would be really good to be a part of. The last thing I'm going to talk about
for me is taking beyond expected outputs and talking about anticipated outcomes. And I'm going to defer heavily back to the content with the EOI document for that one.
I won't read the whole thing, but look, I can give you a little bit and really emphasize the points that are important to us. So the project on heat stress is anticipated to produce those multifaceted outcomes with tangible and intangible benefits. Tangibly, the project is expected to yield measurable results. And the optimum word there is measurable results for us. We work in a sector and an industry that really does respond to those measurable results.
Quantified understandings and looking at how variables intersect and everything like that. If it's clear and it's simple, that's what we can communicate, and that's what we can really use very well within our sector.
Look, there's very interesting potential in there for measurable results translating further into reduced instances of heat-related injuries, but also improve performance metrics and even lowered healthcare
workers' compensation costs associated with treating health-related injuries. Plenty of secondary points that are of benefit there. But the last thing I want to sort of stick with is, so additionally, the project's findings could contribute to broader occupational health discussions, influencing policies and practice not just within the emergency management sector, but across professions facing similar challenges, thereby impacting the broader spectrum of workplace safety and well-being. Essentially, where this sits with us is heat health is a topic that is here to stay, and first responders are definitely going to be part of that conversation moving forward.
Overall, for me, the topic and the project topic to me is very exciting, very important, and offers researchers that real latitude in providing novel perspective and understanding of heat sources and environments.
That is genuinely useful and practical to first responders. I've pumped out a lot of information in a pretty short period of time. I'm very happy to answer questions towards the end of the presentation. But other than that, I'll head back to Ro now.
Thank you very much for that, Michael, and to you too, Mark. Big part of NHRA is collaboration. As a researcher and as a participant organisation, you've got different skill sets, and when you can combine the two, it is fantastic. So we're really requesting and requiring the researchers to have a collaborative approach to the translation and transfer of knowledge and talking and working in well with their end users. We need to make sure we meet the needs of our NHRA participant organisations. So the researchers are encouraged to outline your approach to ensure effective collaboration, which could include embedding researchers within an annual organisation for a period of time, or coming along to our, definitely you have to come to our project management committees, but you might find you need extra working groups or something, particularly with this project, because it is quite a big project on such an important topic. So your ideas on best collaborative approaches are most welcomed. Sometimes it takes a while for everyone to get to know one another with a collaborative approach. So yeah, you do need to allow that time to get to know the end users as well as the researchers together. But it's a good project budget. We've got 500,000 to 750,000, and your EOI basically can say where you fit within that budget extent. It's a 3-year time frame. NHRA are really big on the governance, hence the collaboration. So we prefer one lead provider for contracting purposes. The contract is with NHRA. There'll be a project management committee that meets quarterly to check on the milestones. You can have a reference group. It's a good idea if you're working with lots of different agencies, and with this project you will be. We do require regular meetings to make sure everyone's informed and knows how the project is progressing, as well as so that end users can give that feedback as to, is the research heading in the right direction. Reporting, you will write a project plan. In that, we have a milestone delivery, and we use a package called Salesforce to actually track the milestones. There's quarterly reports where you give more of the information, more of the written details, and we can pass that on to our stakeholders so they can stay up to date with the project. The evaluation report, it's not a nightmare report, like it's not lots and lots of boxes. It's actually writing quite a few paragraphs about how well the project went or where we can improve on the collaboration, what were the objectives, and really what are the outcomes, how is it going to be useful, usable, and used. Stakeholder presentations, it can be fantastic being part of NHRA. We have the forum each year, which is one coming up in Adelaide. Shameless plug right now, register now. We've got the little Adelaide 18-20 June 2025 event happening now, but we bring our researchers to that to present to the end users. But there's a lot of other forums where it's appropriate to deliver presentations as well. So we do a great job of supporting our researchers because we really want their information to be shared with our end users. The EOI process, what you need to do is jump onto the website and download it. I assume you already have, seeing you're here at the information session, but on our website is where you can download the forms that you need to fill in to apply. There's also a budget that goes with it. Please fill that form in as well. If there's any contact about the project, obviously we're going to open it up to talk today, as well as you can put information into the chat, but could you please email research@naturalhazards.com.au. No point emailing myself, Mark, or Michael, because we're going to send those questions straight to research. And this is for probity reasons. We want to make sure everybody's getting the same information. We want to make sure it's fair across the board. So we will publish that in the question and answers on our website. So you've all got the same information and been given what other people have asked in their questions. The submission of this EOI, it's due on Friday the 14th of April 2025 by 5 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time for those in WA or Queensland. Make sure you look at the time difference, but I think it's pretty good. We've finished daylight savings by then, so it's only WA really, in South Australia and Tassie, that might have a bit of an excuse. The making of submission, I'm not going to read this out to you, but in the form, there's a word limit for them. If you're having troubles, ring us up, let us know. Don't hand it in the night before, but we don't want to be reading a big essay. It's actually limiting in the form as to how much you can fill in for each one. So make sure your application is on point. and explains really well what you're up to. We do have selection criteria that addresses all of these different capabilities, so make sure you do address them. There's a table, which is my next slide, that shows the weighting that we have for each of the different criteria that we're looking at for this project. But yeah, I just went back up the slide again. There, we do require a 2-page CV for the people involved in your project team. So you can get the detail of this in the EOI. Today is the 2nd of April, so due date is the 14th of April. And I'd now like to open it up for people to ask questions. You can pop them in the chat or put your hand up, and we'll get to answering whatever extra information you require today.
Probably just one note from me, Ro. I think on one of the previous slides it said Friday the 14th of April, but the 14th of April is a Monday.
Ah, that's my typo. I'll take that one. Did we
Snuck
say
in.
a Friday? That will have snuck in from a previous one when it was a Friday, but it's a Monday. Definitely the 14th of April. Got the date right.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Just to make sure that's clear with everyone. Thanks.
Surely there's questions. How could there not be questions? Or did Michael do such a great job of writing the EOI? All our 26 participants today know what's happening. And it's not that we can't see their hands up. No, I can see you all sitting there smiling, going, what a fantastic project. Can't wait to write my application for it. We really do appreciate your interest in it. It's going to be a great outcome for our first responders to have a better understanding of heat sources and heat stress and how we can look after them. Okay, well, I'll just close up by saying thank you to our presenters for their time today. And thank you for your questions, which I've got one now. NHRA contracting and in terms, what do we do in regards to Indigenous knowledge and IP? Okay, this is one, it's a little bit more open. Are you going to be surveying Indigenous people, in which case you need to be very careful with your ethics? I recommend you hop onto the NHRA webpage and have a look at our cultural protocols and our First Nation. We have specific information. I'll check whether we've got that in our question and answers, but you can have a look at our principles and how we follow through on making sure that information's correct. IP, yes, there's clauses in the contract that deal with Indigenous knowledge and their IP as well that we'll have to adhere to. Does that answer your question for you? Are stakeholders limited to supporting organisations listed within the EOI? No, look, we can have all stakeholders involved in this project, but in particular, the people on the project management committee or the reference group will tend to be our supporting organisations. They're the ones who have contributed money towards the project, and we do like to deliver them products in return. But heat stress for all first line people is definitely a big issue, and we will be across all different stakeholders from that point of view. Is it specifically about firefighters or include other first responders as well? We are including all first responders in this project.
Hey, Ro, in the absence of any other questions, if I didn't emphasize it enough, there is enormous interest in this project from our department and from across the sector. I can't stress that enough. People are watching this very intently, and you will get really good engagement with how this goes.
If you have any further questions, please email them to research@naturalhazards.com.au, and we'll put these 3 questions up on the website as well. All your questions and the frequently asked questions, along with recording of this online briefing, will be posted on our project page of our website as well as our YouTube channel. So I thank everybody for your time today and have a great afternoon. Look forward to seeing your submissions. Big thanks to Michael and Mark and Lara as well.